Hello to all of the introverted misfits who are tuning into this episode of the Introverted Misfit podcast. First things first, I am so sorry about missing last week's podcast episode, but I have actually been out of town in Texas for the past few days, visiting family and also doing some business related things. And I did try to record this podcast episode while I was in Texas, but I just couldn't publish it because I filmed it in this really empty room and my voice was echoing a lot and I listened back to it and I just wasn't happy with the audio quality. So I just decided to wait until I was back at my own computer with my better quality microphone so that I could give you an episode that had much better sound quality. Anyway, I am kind of upset that I spent all that time recording and then editing it only to not use the footage, but that's life, I suppose. Today, I want to talk about some advice that may not sound very good on the surface, but that has actually changed my entire life. Has anyone ever said to you, nobody cares about you that much? Or maybe nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are? Maybe they've said this to you when you're about to give a speech or a presentation and you're getting really nervous and really worked up about it. So someone calmly says to you, this is nothing to worry about. Nobody is going to be thinking about this as soon as they walk out of this room. Or maybe you've just said something really awkward and cringy in front of some people, and you called your friend to tell them about it, and they try to reassure you that everything will be okay by insisting. Nobody even cares. They've already forgotten what you said that was so awkward, or something along those lines. I used to hate this advice a lot, mostly because of how it can be so easily misinterpreted. Depending on what your mental state is and your life experiences are, you could hear that advice and really start to internalize it and actually believe that there is no one out there who cares about you or your well being. And that is not what I'm saying with this advice. So let me just go ahead and dispel that misinterpretation, especially because I know many of my listeners are autistic like me and can sometimes take things very literally. This advice does not literally mean that no one cares about you and no one cares about how you're doing. Your parents, your siblings, your friends, your significant other, if you've chosen the right one, your church family, God, there are people out there who care about you and care about what you're going through. And if that's not the case, you can find them, but that is not the focus of today's episode. The focus of this episode is to show you that generally nobody is watching, judging, and thinking about every little thing that you say and do. And hopefully, I can convince you that this can be some of the most liberating advice that you will ever accept. So let's get into it. As someone who used to suffer with social anxiety, I used to care a lot about what people thought about me. Too much. I mean, the definition of social anxiety could be a state of caring too much about what other people think of you. That's not the medical, clinical diagnosis or definition, but as someone who had it and experienced it, that's a very layman's term or layman's explanation of what it is. And I think it's pretty accurate because social anxiety is an intense fear of judgment, embarrassment, and rejection from others. So much so that you are afraid of talking to people and being social. So my hyperfixation on other people's opinion of me was ruining my social life and consequently my life in general. Because honestly, what kind of life is a life with no friends or no social connections, all because you're scared of talking to people and starting relationships? Everybody needs quality relationships, whether you're introverted, autistic, neither, or both. I thought people cared about what I said and what I did so much that I was afraid to disagree with people because I thought they wouldn't like me anymore. I was afraid to have a conversation with someone because I just knew that I would say the wrong thing that would make people side eye me and think that I was weird. I was nervous about wearing a dress and dressing up in general because I had all these ideas about what people might think or say about me. I mean, you know how girls and women can be sometimes. Oh, why would she wear those shoes with that dress? Or she must think she's cute or something. I was afraid to speak up during those team meetings at work because I was worried I would make a mistake or sound stupid. Whenever I would make a mistake or say the wrong thing in a social setting, maybe say something awkward or cringy, especially if it was in a group setting, I would stop participating in the conversation altogether because I would get so embarrassed and I would start overthinking. And I was convinced that everyone else was holding this one mistake against me and they didn't want to talk to me anymore. Completely delusional, I know, but that's what social anxiety does to you. When you care too much about what other people think, you become afraid to live your life. You're never going to start that business that you want to start because of what people may say, or pursue that new career opportunity that will make you more fulfilled or make you more money because you care too much about people's opinions. I once coached a client who struggled a lot with something called rejection sensitive dysphoria, or RSD for short, which is very common among autistic people and ADHD people. RSD is an overreaction to perceived or actual rejection. So basically, in the face of rejection, or even in situations where there is no rejection or there was no rejection intended by the other person, your brain is going to find a way to be offended and overreact. Whether you overreact externally by saying something or just internally by going nonverbal and crying, internally crying. So maybe someone says a harmless joke about you that they didn't think would offend you, and then you take it really personally. Maybe someone side eyes you, or maybe they don't respond to something that you said as enthusiastically as you thought they would respond or hope they would respond. And you end up thinking that they hate you or they just don't like you and they don't want to talk to you anymore. Those are a few examples. But let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced RSD before. So this client was really nervous about rock climbing with a friend of theirs because they thought other people, more experienced rock climbers, were going to judge them and basically pick her form apart. So this client couldn't even go out on a fun outing with a friend because they were so worried about what other people were thinking. When in reality, everyone else who was there was just there to enjoy themselves. They were just there to enjoy the rock climbing alone or with other people. They likely were not going to focus on this client and her newbie mistakes at all. Maybe the instructor would focus on this person as they should because they are there for the rock climber's safety, but not regular people who were just there to rock climb. The truth is that as long as your decisions don't negatively affect others, most people don't care as much as you think they do. They are far too busy worrying about what's going on in their own lives. They're worrying about a bad breakup that they just had. They're worrying about how they're going to pay their next bill. They're worrying about their teenage son who got into some trouble at school. They have way too many things going on in their own lives to be sitting around and nitpicking every little thing you do. Most people generally don't care. And here's why that can be some of the most liberating advice for you. You have permission to go after what you know is for you, what you know your purpose is. Because again, people don't care that much. There are some exceptions to that rule, which we'll get to a little later, but generally, people don't care that much. If you want to try a new hobby, but you're worried that you won't be any good, or that people will make fun of you, do it anyway. If you have a solid business idea that you know is good, but you're too afraid of what people might say, there is no shame in trying. And there's no shame in failing either, truth be told. If you are in over your head financially because you bought a car that is way too expensive for you, very common problem in America, by the way, and you know the best thing is for you to downgrade to a more affordable car that may not look as cool, stop worrying so much about what people may think and do what you know you need to do. Nobody cares that much. They may talk about it, they may even gossip about it behind closed doors when you're not in the room, but that's it. Past those few words that they say about you, they're not going to invest any serious energy into what you're doing with your life. Now, are there exceptions to this advice? Of course there are. There are exceptions to most rules in life. There are some things that you do in your life, some decisions that you will make, in which you should care about what other people think about you and think about what you're doing, or you should at least consider what others have to say. If you're doing something that is harming someone else, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, people have a right to care about what you're doing and tell you how they feel. Or, you know that feeling when you found a new love interest and you're just head over heels for them, even when you know deep down, because of your intuition, that they are probably not a good person for you to go after. And your best friend or your family member is trying to tell you in the nicest way that you may want to rethink this relationship. This might not be the kind of person you want to be involved with, right? They're pointing out all of those red flags that you can't see right now because you've got the love blinders on. And it seems like everyone in your life is telling you the exact same thing, the same advice. That may be an exception to this rule. Or here's another example. Maybe you have been known to make very impulsive decisions in the past. And so the people in your life are trying to warn you and give you some perspective about your decisions. I know for me, when I first founded my brand, The Introverted Misfit, including this podcast, my coaching services, and everything else, the first person who came to me with those challenging questions was my dad. It's been that way my whole life, honestly. Every time I have a new idea or want to try something new, here comes my dad to make me question everything. It's a good kind of questioning, though. I know it's coming from a sincere place of concern. There are many exceptions, which is why it's really important for you to have self-awareness and some reliable mentors, friends, etc., who can steer you in the right direction. You need that solid community who's not afraid to tell you when you may be making a mistake, give you some guidance, give you their opinion. I just needed to add that quick disclaimer in there because I know how the internet works, where you can say one thing and then it kind of gets taken out of context and people misunderstand your intent. But let's get back to talking about the primary focus, caring too much about what people think. I want to now talk about the source of this obsession, this hyperfixation on what other people think of you. The root of the problem is that you don't really value yourself. Or in some cases, I might even go as far as to say, you don't really love yourself enough. You don't have enough confidence or trust in yourself, your abilities, your ideas, and your talents. And as a result, you are quick to let other people determine your worth with their opinions. So someone questions or challenges an idea that you have, and it could be coming from a good place. There might not be any malintent behind it, but you internalize these questions and these challenges as you not being smart enough. Someone is jealous of your drive and your ambition, so they start saying negative things about you. And because you're not secure within yourself, you actually believe them. So even though most people don't really care that much, you are so insecure within yourself that you tend to think people are judging you, criticizing your every move, and just waiting on you to fail. Well, here's the key point that I want you to walk away with. Even if people are judging you, talking about you, criticizing you behind closed doors, you do not need to prove anything to anyone except for you, the people who are directly in your life, whose decisions, who will be affected by your decisions, and God. So if you are making decisions in your life for you, your family, and the people that you know and love, and you know it's what needs to be done, you have to stop obsessively worrying about what others will say and think. You have to. People are always going to talk. I remember when my idea for this podcast was still just a random thought in my mind. It wasn't even a fully formed thought. I hadn't told anyone about it yet, and I was so nervous to publish my first episode because I was thinking to myself, who am I to be a podcaster? Who in the world wants to listen to what I have to say? Everybody has a podcast these days. What makes yours so special? And I remember telling myself that it's probably not worth it to start a podcast because I'm never going to get hundreds of thousands of followers and views like the bigger names. And I was convinced that other people would think those same things about me too. I thought when I told them that I had a podcast, they would go check it out. They would search it on YouTube and look at it, see that it doesn't have thousands of followers and likes and listeners just yet. And they would think, oh, this podcast isn't really worth anything. Well, guess what? I did it anyway because I know the true intentions that I have for my podcast. And I know that I don't need to have a ton of followers and listeners for it to be impactful. And in reality, no one has ever said anything outright negative about my podcast to my face. Now, they may have said something negative about it when I'm not around, but never to my face. You know why? Because most people don't care enough about what I'm doing to go out of their way and say those things to me, with some exceptions. The ones who do care and listen and support me, we do talk about it in person. And if I ask them, they will even give me some constructive criticism about what I talk about and how it's formatted and things like that, which I always appreciate. But the ones who don't really listen and support and don't really care that much, which again, is nothing to worry about. If the podcast isn't for you, then it's just not for you. It usually never comes up in discussion. We just talk about other things that are going on in our lives, and then we just move on with our lives. Just do what you need to do and what you want to do with good intentions in mind. Know when it's time to course correct, and you will be fine. This is your life that you have to live. No one else can live it for you. No one else has to experience the consequences of your decisions or lack thereof. So their opinions can only have as much meaning in your life as you allow them to have. Now, if you're one of those introverted misfits who has listened to what I had to say and you feel empowered to start living in your purpose without caring what people think, that is fantastic. And I hope that it's resonating with you enough for you to hit the like and subscribe button and to share this episode with someone who you know needs to hear it. Someone who cares way too much about what other people think. But I know that there are some of you listening who heard everything I said, and yet you're still struggling to apply it in your life. You're one of those shy, socially anxious introverts who cares way too much about what other people think of you, and it is greatly affecting your ability to not only form and maintain relationships, but to just live your life. live a full and healthy life. Because you're afraid of judgment and rejection, you may be too nervous to start a conversation with someone. So relationships never have a chance to form. And when you do manage to start the beginnings of a new friendship or acquaintance or romantic relationship, something happens. You don't follow through with the relationship. You don't ever reach out to the other person because you're convinced they don't like you or that you're too boring for them to want to hang out with. Or maybe they said something that offended you, or you said something that offended them, but because you're too worried about making the other person have a negative opinion of you, you never address the issue. And so, as usual, the relationship just fizzles out. Those are the kinds of relationships or lack thereof that you get when you are overly obsessed with what other people think of you. Your life does not have to continue down this path if you don't want it to. You can become a socially confident introvert without having to act like someone you're not. You can build your self confidence and your sense of self worth to a point where other people's opinions of you don't cripple you and control your every move. That's part of what I help shy and awkward introverts like yourself or someone that you know accomplish. I help introverts who are so fearful of rejection or being embarrassed or judged that they can't find the confidence to socialize and talk to people or even just put themselves in situations where people would want to approach them and talk to them. You see, as a shy and awkward introvert, it's likely that someone or some situation has taught you that people are thinking about your mistakes and your insecurities as much as you think about them. But in reality, people don't care about those things as much as you care about them. And once you can internalize that and really understand it, that's when things will start to change for you. You will be able to start making mistakes confidently so that you can become a socially confident version of yourself. And that's exactly what my program, Communicate with Quiet Confidence, is all about. If you want to talk with me more about how I can help you, book your free connection call with me using the link in the description of this episode, or you can go directly to theintrovertedmisfit.com/coaching to read more about the program, and then you can book your call with me from that page. That's all for today's episode. As always, if you enjoyed this talk, please don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button, leave a review and or a comment whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Spotify podcasts, or Apple Podcasts, and share this podcast with a friend. Thanks for listening and have a great day.